please remain standing for prayers to be said by Reverend Canon Andrew Stoddart Kennedy. Thank you.
Let's take a few moments to centre our thoughts. We think first of the wish we all have in common, the flourishing of the people of this London Borough and our own part in wider society. We think about our need to listen to each other and not to judge each other, to be courageous and creative, to sit lightly to what we think we know, to enjoy each other's company. We think about how we can work together in the future. And let us commit ourselves to all that works for good in our common life. And may the Spirit of God's love lead us into truth. Amen.
Could you remain standing for a minute's silence as we remember Josephine Barrett, former councillor, past mayor, freedom of the borough, who passed away in December. Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, just before we begin the formal part of the business, a quick note for the benefit of members of the public present and those who might be watching on the YouTube broadcast at home. The Council is moving towards the position of paperless agendas, without meetings. So if you do see a number of members in the room on their tablets or on their phones, they are looking at the agenda by electronic means, and that would be the reason why, just in case you think they're not paying attention.
Right. Good evening. Item number 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have apologies from Councillors Abbey, Burles, Rita Chamdal, Roy Chamdal, Dott, Gardner and Makwana.
Thank you. Item number 2, to receive the minutes of the meeting. All agreed? Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No? Item 4, me. Good evening again. Before I start, I would like to start by offering my congratulations to Councillor Peter Smallwood on being awarded an OBE. Well done, Peter. The run-up to Christmas was both magical and wonderful. And here is a brief summary of the events I've had the honour to attend. It was wonderful to switch on Christmas lights at a care home which the residents had created into a winter wonderland. There were many sing-along carol events which helped me to get into the Christmas spirit. The highlight of my Christmas events was the Boogie Woogie Nativity concert by the reception class at Breakspear School. It was a real joy to watch and to listen to the young people belt out songs and carols. Thank you to Councillor Lakmana for inviting me to the Crane Pensioners Club Christmas lunch. It was a pleasure to join in the festivities and to meet residents and volunteers. Thank you. It was also wonderful to attend the Field Heath School Christmas performance. It was a journey of hope, and to present a leadership award to Mason. I attended Pamela Bernard's 100th birthday party, celebrated her 100th birthday with her family and friends, which was a wonderful occasion, and I did a bit of dancing. It was a pleasure to attend the Canadian Forces Support Unit's annual Moose Milk Christmas festivities. I'll explain later. Attending a pantomime at Christmas is a must. Oh yes, it is. It was indeed a pleasure to attend the panto of Snow White at the Compass Theatre, and to meet Dame Doughball again, and to be part of the excitement of all the young people present. There's really nothing like a Dame Doughball. It was a great pleasure to attend the Patient Appreciation Christmas party at the chiropractic clinic, and to hear all about the support the clinic provides to the local community. I was invited to Brunel University to celebrate their winter graduation ceremony, and congratulations to students from colleges of health, medicine and life sciences on receiving their awards. I was delighted to attend the induction of Rabbi Shea at Northwood and Ruislip United Synagogue, and for the warm welcome. And thank you to Ruislip High School for inviting me to their presentation evening, and congratulations to so many young people on receiving awards. Many groups and organizations have been welcomed to the Mayor's Parlour. Army Cadets from 191 Uxbridge Squadron, TS Pelican Junior Sea Cadets, Hillingdon Chamber of Commerce, and delegates from the Chinese Trade Association, our local Hillingdon Borough Police, and a thank you event to all staff. I would like to leave you with this thought. Find a group of people who challenge and inspire you. Spend a lot of time with them, and it will change your life. Thank you. Item 5. Question from Mr. Punja, please.
Good evening and Happy New Year to you all. You probably recognise my face. At the council meeting in July 2024, the cabinet member advised, and I quote from the minutes, that the document was now in the final stages of drafting, so we'd publish shortly. Ruislip Woods Trust, along with many of our members, are now getting impatient with the council, and we further believe the council are currently in breach of their statutory duty due to a lack of a 5-year management plan for Ruislip Woods. Will the cabinet member please provide a more specific timeline as to when an updated management plan will be consulted on and published, and to also commit to a follow-up meeting within 6 weeks with the relevant council officers to provide a more specific update on the overall management of Ruislip Woods as a follow-up? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Punja, for his questions. In my answer to Council at the July 2024 Council meeting, I said that the Ruislip Woods complex has the benefit of a management plan which was written and adopted in 1982. This is a 100-year vision for the management of the site, and a 5-yearly review is conducted. The management of the woods has continued to be undertaken in the spirit of that 100-year vision, with the latest plan continuing with the to protect the semi-natural ancient woodland. I am pleased to say, despite some delay, which I acknowledge, the most recent plan has been written and reviewed and is expected to be published by the Corporate Director early next week. Any meetings that interested parties wish to arrange with officers, I will leave to them. Thank you.
Item 5.2, Mr. Gaelic.
Hillingdon Council has failed in its handling of flood mitigation issues, particularly in relation to the recent flooding events in Ruislip and West Drayton, as well as other parts of the borough. Residents have expressed concerns about the council's slow response to flooding emergencies, inadequate drainage systems, and lack of long-term planning to address the increasing risk of flooding due to climate change. Why is the Council's allocation of resources to flood mitigation projects funding not kept pace with the growing need for flood protection measures? Surely with the claimed sound financial management on countless occasions more could have been done. Given the fact that only now Hillingdon is asking for evidence on how in September 2024 flooding has affected residents, it seems there's been a past failure to take this matter seriously. What is the Council prepared to do to protect residents and help environmental groups reach their goals, especially as there needs to be more done to protect communities from the devastating effects of flooding?
Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr Gaelic, for raising this important issue. Although I do wonder whether this is public question time or Labour Party questions. Flooding is a devastating event for any community, and I want to assure you and all residents that Hillingdon Council takes the matter of flood mitigation and response very seriously. The well-being of our residents remains our top priority. The September flooding occurred due to the unprecedented rainfall, with over a month's worth of rain falling in a single 24-hour period. Our initial understanding of the flooding in Ruislip Gardens is that Yedding Brook, the main river, was at capacity and could not receive any further discharges from Thames Water sewage work, which drains a vast area including upstream in Harrow. In summary, the water had nowhere to drain to, and this caused the flooding impact. The September event illustrates the complexity of how flooding is managed. The Environment Agency has the lead responsibility for managing how rivers operate and any subsequent flooding. Thames Water is largely responsible for the drainage assets that take surface water from roads, buildings and hard standings to the river. And the Council Highways Department is predominantly responsible for conveying water from the highways to the Thames Water network. In addition, landowners have their own responsibilities for ensuring that watercourses, including rivers on their own land, flow appropriately. The Council therefore has limited direct control of the drainage and river network systems. Instead, the primary role of the Council is as lead flood authority to coordinate the management of surface water flood risk, with the Environment Agency taking the lead for river flooding. I must refute the claim that the Council has failed in its handling of recent events, and it's disappointing you've looked to criticise the hard work of so many Council officers who are mainly local residents. Following the unprecedented rainfall at the end of September 24, particularly in Ruislip Gardens, the area most significantly affected, our response was swift, coordinated and effective. Elected members working closely with Council officers took immediate action to support residents, including door-to-door welfare checks to ensure vulnerable residents were safe and supported, suspension of parking management schemes to the impacted area to alleviate logistical challenges, free bulk waste collections to assist households clearing flood-damaged items, continual contact with ward councillors to identify and address any emerging issues, working with local schools to ensure that school buildings were able to provide an education to our young people, and where they were impacted by flooding, what alternative provisions could be made. We understand the frustrations regarding the challenges posed by climate change and the increased risk of flooding from heavily concentrated rainfall. This is a national issue that requires partnership across all levels of government, as well as the active engagement of environmental groups and the community. Whilst Hillingdon's drainage systems are robust, the scale of recent weather events has pushed systems across the country to their limits. Regarding resources, the Council has demonstrated sound financial management over many years to ensure funding is available for critical projects. Over the last 5 years, we have significantly invested in infrastructure upgrades, including flood defences and improved drainage works. I do have a long list, but I'll just quote one or two examples. Bessenby Park, Elephant and Court Park, rain gardens in Eastcote, flood alleviation measures at Croyd Avenue on the Cranford Estate, natural flood management in collaboration with residents in Park Wood, working with HS2 to secure flood management and control measures in Ickenham. And there are quite a list more. However, we recognise that more needs to be done. Following the September flooding, The Council is actively gathering evidence from residents to ensure no issue goes unaddressed and to inform future investments. This is not a reflection of past inaction, but a commitment to ensure that decisions are based on the lived experiences of those who are directly affected. It is deeply disappointing that instead of focusing on constructive solutions for residents affected by devastating flooding, and not for the first time, you've chosen to hijack a serious incident to use as an excuse to come to this chamber and use up valuable time available for residents' questions with an attempt to score political points. Yeah. We have received lots of positive comments and thanks from our residents relating to our response and our efforts to provide support and assistance. It appears that once again, not dissimilar to your forays into local politics, you find yourself on the opposite side to Hillingdon residents' opinions. The Conservative administration remains fully committed to protecting our communities and delivering real and measurable results. We will not be distracted by criticism of individuals with a constant track record of failure when it comes to listening to local residents, nor will we take lessons from a tourist MP who only managed to visit the affected area 3 weeks later, turning up not to help but to get a photo opportunity. Finally, I wish to thank residents, community groups and in particular the council teams who worked tirelessly during the September flooding. Your resilience and commitment are a testament to the strength of our borough, and together we will ensure Hillingdon remains a safe and supportive place for all. Thank you.
Item 6, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I move the report from the Head of Democratic Services, which is in 3 parts, and I will move them all together. The first part is advising Council of the 3 urgent decisions taken by me, 2 of which relate to building. It's to keep those building programmes on schedule, and the third one was a reinsurance matter to ensure continuation of cover. The second item is to approve the recommended programme of meetings and to delegate to the Head of Democratic Services in consultation with the Chief Whips of both parties that the programme of meetings be approved. And the third item is to note the report of the Audit Committee, which is in the appendices as well. And I'm pleased to say that the Audit Committee has given assurance on each of the measures with regards to internal, external audit, the control of fraud and risk management, has assured satisfaction with regards to each of those. So I move the recommendations to note, to approve and to note. Thank you.
Is there a seconder?
Madam Mayor, I second those items, and reserve my right to speak at the end should it be necessary.
Are there any other speakers? Is that agreed? Agreed. Item 7, Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 7 is the adoption of the updated statement of gambling policy, which went through Cabinet in December of 2024. It has been out to public consultation, only contains minor revisions from the current policy and no policy changes, and therefore I would request that Council adopt the revised statement. Thank you.
Is there a seconder? No?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I do second that.
Are there any other speakers? Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Item 8. Yes, Councillor Goddard. Sorry, Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members will be aware that this item represents Hillingdon's compliance with a routine statutory obligation, which is to present a calculation of its council tax base as it stood at the 30th of November 2024, and to provide a forecast of business rates income for the financial year 25-26. These obligations need to be complied with by the 31st of January 2025. The manner in which the council tax base is calculated and reported is in terms of Band D equivalent properties. I can report that the so calculated number of Band D equivalent properties in Hillingdon amounts to 105,422, and that this represents a net increase of 754 additional properties over the equivalent level as reported at 24-25, which will increase council tax revenue by £1,050,000, which of course will be compounded by the proposed increases in council tax and the adult social care precinct. We have proposed a series of 8 amendments to our council tax reduction scheme, which if implemented will reduce the relief granted in 25-26 by £1.2 million, with £1 million of this accruing to Hillingdon. A consultation process has been concluded, which indicates majority support for these measures, both amongst residents and more specifically those residents in receipt of the CTRS scheme. These proposals have also been correctly and properly subjected to an equalities impact assessment. Our forecast of business rates income retained by Hillingdon indicates 72,129,000 for 25-26, which represents a 3.8 million increase on 24-25 levels. I must remind members that Hillingdon is only permitted to retain approximately 18% of the gross income derived from business rates within the borough, the lion's share accruing to central government and to the Greater London Authority. I must also mention that the introduction of lower multipliers for businesses within the retail, hospitality and leisure sectors, as announced within the Chancellor's autumn budget statement, will be reported, albeit that Hillingdon, like all councils, will be reimbursed for this relief. The council tax base, the council tax reduction scheme adjustments and the business rates forecast comprise an integral part of the consultation budget, which was circulated in December 2024. I therefore move the recommendations A to E set out on page 3 of the ordered paper for this evening's business. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Is there a seconder?
Madam Mayor, I second reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Councillor Mathers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I speak today of our group's concerns about the changes to the council tax reduction scheme as placed in recommendation E on the order paper. Let me start by saying I understand the logic of creating parity with the nationally determined pensioners' council tax reduction scheme and acknowledge the additional support given to care leavers. Hillingdon Labour have advocated in past budget amendments before this chamber the need to support our care leavers through the council tax reduction scheme. This was harshly rejected by the Conservative administration at the time, so I'm glad to see they now concede to our amendment to support our care leavers in this way. However, other changes to the reduction scheme equal some 1.2 million being taken out of the scheme. The majority of this money will be taken from those who are deemed vulnerable in following financial years. This is compounding difficulties that low-income families, households are facing. For example, in recent years, the minimum award has gone up from £1 a week to now £2 to then £3. This means that this proposal, on top of a proposed nearly 5% council tax rise, will leave low-income residents having to find extra money at the sum of £52 this year. Equally, non-dependents who may have disabilities or ill health or other low-income factors are likely on fixed incomes are having to find an extra £104 a year with the £2 extra each week. This may not seem like big numbers to us in the chamber, but for vulnerable and low-income households, this makes a real difference, potentially missing a meal to pay council tax or going into arrears. The threshold changes target the vulnerable. The new caps target those with less. The removing of protections and many measures in these changes will hit the most vulnerable families by 1.2 million. Therefore, the Labour Group will be abstaining on this vote. We cannot, in good conscience, be taking £1.5 million from those most vulnerable and financially struggling in our communities. Hillingdon residents deserve better.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I recognise the concern being expressed, and it is with reluctance that we, along with close to half the authorities, local authorities in London, are having to look at the council tax reduction scheme. This isn't a consequence of our desire, but it is being forced upon us by the inadequacies of the government funding. The economy is now in such a weak state following the disastrous Labour budget that the Chancellor is now instructing government departments to find additional savings. That does not foretell well for future funding of this council. It is very clear that there is a divide between the two of us. On the opposing side of the chamber, the Labour group is quite prepared to spend whatever they think is necessary, whereas this side, we will only spend the amount that we can afford. And that means that we have to make these tough decisions. We've not shied away from them in the past. They have been opposed in the past. I hope very much that when the budget amendment comes forward, we will see provision being made for this additional £1.5 million of expenditure that they are now wishing to place on us, recognising the inadequacy of government funding to date, of which I will speak about more in the budget meeting. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are currently 12,637 households being supported through the working age element of CTRS at a gross cost of £12.2 million. Over the 4 years since 2021, the cost of the overall scheme has grown by 13% or £1.4 million. Whilst it must be acknowledged that approximately 25% of this cost is borne by the Greater London Authority, the existing residual cost of £9.15 million falls upon this council and is a material and unsustainable burden in the context of the constraints on funding which we need to sustain. It should be noted that the reductions in CTRS are being implemented by a majority of London councils, and that the consultation process undertaken indicated overall support for the proposed measures amongst respondents, including those in receipt of council tax relief. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Okay. That's carried. Thank you. Item 9, members' questions. 9.8. Councillor Smallwood.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can the Cabinet Member provide an update for our residents on the future provision of childcare at the Council's early year centres?
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Smallwood, for your question. In 2023, following a review of the sustainability of our early years nurseries, the Council consulted with parents, carers, residents and the wider public on the proposals for the delivery model of the Council's childcare provision of 3 nurseries and how the sufficiency of childcare is best met within the borough. Following the outcome of the public consultation held in 2023 and the Conservative Government's childcare plan in early 2024 to roll out a new childcare offer to eligible working parents of all children older than 9 months old by September 2024 and to all under 5s by September 2025. The Council looked at the forecasted data and agreed that the best way to progress in the childcare landscape was to look for an alternative provider that would be in a position to take over the delivery of childcare at the 3 nurseries located in Hayes, the Nestle Centre, South Ruislip and Uxbridge. A specialist agent was commissioned to market the nurseries and oversee the provider engagement process, resulting in expressions of interest from a range of providers before deciding on the London Early Years Foundation and enter into a 15-year lease agreement with them. The London Early Years Foundation is the UK's largest and most successful charitable childcare social enterprise. It operates 41 nurseries across 12 London boroughs, delivering early years education and care to children from birth to 5 years old. The new arrangement will ensure that our residents with young families who require childcare have the continuity of high quality early years education, with the operator having a proven track record of providing childcare provision rated good or outstanding by Ofsted. The lease will also generate a regular income for the Council, with the LEYF having a sole occupancy of the sites, allowing to have its own autonomy on expansion of places if required in the future, and support sufficiency of childcare in the borough for our younger residents. Whilst the nurseries continue to operate as usual, officers are working at pace to support a smooth transition to the LEYF's management in the coming weeks and support staff, children and families through the process. I would like to thank the work of our Child and Family Support Service and recognise our nursery staff who every day do a wonderful job in looking after our youngest children in the borough, enabling them to thrive. I would like to thank the families who have been on the journey with us, who have been updated as the process has gone along and who should not notice any difference in the service going forwards. In particular, I thank two officers, Claire Fry and Sandra Taylor, who have been relentless in pursuing the best outcomes for our residents who require childcare and for our council as we deliver our statutory duties, future-proof our services, deliver better value for our residents and release the financial burden from our council tax-paying residents and continuing to put Hillingdon residents first. Thank you.
Is there a supplementary question?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Item 9.1, Councillor Sweeting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The previous Director of Finance assessed that general reserves of between 32 to 55 million were needed to ensure the Council has financial resilience to address both foreseen and unforeseen risks. The current projected levels of reserves for 25-26 and beyond, as illustrated by Chart 11, page 38 of the Budget Report presented to the Children, Families and Education Select Committee of the 7th of January 25, show assumed levels of reserves hovering just above 20 million until 27-28. So how confident is the Cabinet member that, given the Council's significant underestimates of delivering savings in the past and over-inflation as to the level of reserves, that levels of reserves will not need to be supported by government intervention, as was mentioned in paragraph 22, page 38 of the aforementioned report? Thank you.
Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Sweeting for your question. Whilst I view the question posed as fair and reasonable, the timing of it, I think, is far less so. In just over a month's time, an amended budget will be published, which inevitably will take account of the currently ongoing consultation process, the continuing work being conducted by our officers, and of course changes derived from the results of the local government settlement, which was received after the consultation budget was circulated. At this stage in these proceedings, therefore, I'm not going to second guess what the implications of those changes will be. Furthermore, as Councillor Sweeting, with her undoubted expertise and experience in matters financial, will understand, our recently appointed Section 151 officer will be publishing his Section 25 report in time for Council on the 27th of February next, which will, amongst other things, address the question of the adequacy of our reserves. Once again, I will not attempt to predict what Mr. Ennis is going to say in this respect. However, I will do my best to respond to Councillor Sweeting's question as much as I can within these limiting conditions. The underfunding of local government is a national issue. Hillingdon is not exempt from the challenges that increasing demands and insufficient funding present. Local government has seen a 70% reduction in funding in real terms. In addition, inflation cost increases have outstripped increases in both government grant funding and council tax increases. The increases in population have not been reflected in the methodology used to allocate funding since 2013-14. Nevertheless, the Council has maintained its low tax strategy to keep more of our taxpayers' residents' hard-earned money in their own pockets and offer the best value for money for services rendered. That it can do this within the challenging economic and funding environment is indeed an achievement. Hear, hear. Specifically, underfunding of adult social care, excuse me, children's residential care, homelessness and waste costs by central government is a particular concern. And these pressures are likely to continue, in particular because of the financial performance of the new Labour government, which has driven up costs by the increase of employers' national insurance, has created a new environment of sustained inflation, economic stagnation, and an increase in the prevailing yield of 10-year gilts, which are, of course, the widely accepted key indicator of government borrowing costs. These have hit the highest level for 16 years and will almost certainly compel the Chancellor to implement either further tax rises and or spending cuts as soon as March of this year. Furthermore, the Commission announced by the Government to evaluate and assess options for resolving the funding of social care will not report until 2028. This means that any substantive reform is highly unlikely to be in place within the current term in office of this government. The determination of the resilience of level reserves is a matter of judgment which is exercised by the authority's Section 151 officer. This is set in the context of the financial forecasts to hand, the strategy which underpins them, and the prevailing control and risk environments. The draft budget, which is currently out for consultation, is not a carbon copy of the 24-25 budget, against which the former Director of Finance made his judgment on the adequacy of reserves last year. It therefore follows that our new Director of Finance will make his own fresh judgment in the current context. Hillingdon's new Section 151 officer has driven a positive and fundamental shift in the strategic direction underlying our forecasts, and indeed the forecasting itself. A key principle within this strategy is a much fuller recognition of the risk factors facing this authority, and hence the establishment of cost structures and contingencies which are consistent with this environment. This is supported by a strong financial management in the shape of a robust and direct exertion of control over the commissioning of expenditure, the implementation of savings, and the exercise of budgetary discipline. Our reserves are too low. We must rebuild them, and that is what we have set out as a priority for this Council in the December Cabinet report. This administration therefore had three choices ahead of it when defining the strategy for the 25-26 budget. Firstly, we could have opted to increase the prevailing rate of council tax in the borough by a factor way beyond the current referendum limit. This is a measure which would have required permission from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, MHCLG for short, and is being pursued by authorities such as Windsor and Maidenhead and Newark. We have rejected this option because, as a Conservative authority, we firmly believe in the principle of low taxation, and we believe that our residents have already suffered heavily from the increased imposition of tax by the new government. Secondly, we could have sought to seek exceptional financial support, or EFS for short. And this presumably is the reference to government intervention, which Councillor Sweeting makes in her question. The most commonly used form of exceptional financial support is to borrow money on a long-term basis to fund day-to-day expenditure. This may buy time, but let's be clear, it's a sticking plaster that rarely, if ever, results in a sustainable solution. As with all types of borrowing, the costs associated with it will be compounded by the significant rise in gilt yields, which in recent days have arisen to their highest level since 1998. So you'll forgive me if I don't take financial advice from the Labour group. Madam Mayor, I'm aware that this option is currently being pursued by at least 20 other authorities in England. The final option is the one that we are pursuing, which is to continue and extend our modernisation programme, cutting out bureaucracy, downsizing our costs in order to live within our existing funding envelope and thus rebuilding our reserves to more acceptable levels. It is clear that the Labour government has taken the nation into a new fiscal crisis, and this could well have a significant adverse bearing on the funding available to local authorities. Madam Mayor, against this background of national instability and in the absence of a finalised budget at this time, I am therefore sure that members will agree with me that it would be unrealistic to attempt to offer the sort of certainty that this question seeks at this time. Thank you.
Is there a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Please could the Cabinet Member explain by providing detailed statistical evidence as to why he is blaming the present government for this council's current precarious financial position, when it was his own Conservative government, through its own ill-thought-out austerity programme, which denied Hillingdon adequate funding for those 14 long years, culminating in the council's need to cut 32 million from the 25-26 budget, and still with more being owed in respect to high needs than the council has in its total reserves. Thank you.
Councillor Goddard.
Well, Madam Mayor, can I start by correcting one fundamental error in the question? We do not owe money in respect of the high needs block within the dedicated schools grant. Okay, we have expended money, okay, which actually the Department of Education owes us. So let's have that clear. The question calls for detailed statistics in terms of how it is that we are as underfunded as we are. I am perfectly happy to take that question away and provide Councillor Sweeting with an answer to that question. Clearly, I do not have those statistics at my fingertips this evening. Thank you.
Is that all right? Item 9.3, Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can the Cabinet Member please provide an update to the Council on the anticipated impact of the Labour government's planning reforms that were announced in December, particularly in terms of how these changes might affect housing delivery, local control over development and the protection of green spaces in Hillingdon?
Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Bennett for your question. Members will be aware of the sweeping planning reforms announced at the end of 2024. These reforms include changes to the National Planning Policy Framework, National Planning Policy Guidance, and a working paper on planning committees. The most striking proposal is the revised housing target for London, 88,000 homes per year, a sharp increase on the current London plan's 52,000 homes per year. These reforms and top-down targets from a Labour government are a political sleight of hand. Linked with this, the Labour Mayor of London, who, true to form, is likely to shift the burden of these increased numbers to outer London boroughs like Hillingdon. London's Labour Mayor will continue to punish residents who have consistently rejected his anti-community and anti-resident policies. Here in Hillingdon, we are committed to sustainable development that respects the character of our great borough. For now, our housing target remains at 1,089 homes annually until March 2026. But we know the London plan will need to be updated to reflect these changes, and boroughs like ours must brace themselves for further pressures when revised targets are revealed later this year. Madam Mayor, the Labour government's latest invention, the Grey Belt, is a direct attack on our environment. This newly defined land, covering previously developed or weaker areas of Greenbelt, would allow for development if brownfield land is deemed insufficient. This is a thinly veiled attempt by Angela Rayner's government to erode the protections our Greenbelt has enjoyed for many generations. Let me be clear. Hillingdon, under this Conservative administration, will resist any attempts to force unsustainable development on our communities. Development on Greybelt must meet stringent criteria including affordable housing, infrastructure investment and new green spaces. We will not allow our borough's identity to be destroyed by Labour's reckless disregard for our communities. Madam Mayor, as for planning committees, Government's working paper proposes a national scheme of delegation, dedicated strategic development committees and mandatory member training. These measures could centralise decision-making at the expense of local accountability. In Hillingdon, we already have a robust and efficient planning system, with 97% of applications determined by officers above the national average. We prioritise strategic developments for committee scrutiny. Under the strong leadership of Councillor Higgins, I am confident that we will continue to uphold a system that serves residents first, not political agendas. These planning reforms are yet another example of Labour's disdain for local communities and their preference for top-down policies. While we recognise the need to address housing pressures, Hillingdon will not be pushed into accepting unsustainable, poorly thought-out policies. Madam Mayor, this council has always stood firm in protecting the interests of our residents. Unlike Labour, whose only consistency is broken promises and political spin, we are committed to real solutions, ones that safeguard the environment, respect local character and deliver housing responsibly. Let me finish with this. Labour's legacy will be one of bulldozers and broken promises. Ours will be one of defending residents, protecting green spaces and building a borough fit for future generations. Hillingdon's Conservative administration will never stand for Labour's reckless policies and we will never stop fighting for our residents. Madam Mayor, members, thank you for lending me your ears this evening.
Is there a supplementary question?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Item 9.6, Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Would the Cabinet member kindly agree to making public the list of any potential assets that are likely to be disposed of or put up for sale to balance the books, so as not to leave Hillingdon residents feeling angry and deeply concerned about the potential lack of transparency and its impact on their communities?
Councillor Bianco.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Core, for your question. I think it will be useful if I start with a little background. Hopefully, all present will then understand the process that leads to a disposal of one of our property assets. Behind every decision relating to the Council's property assets is a simple test. Firstly, is the building in question an operational asset, such as, for example, this building, a library or a school? And if so, is it being occupied well to provide best use? Secondly, is it a building where one of our voluntary partners operate, such as, for example, community centres, scout huts, cricket pavilions? And if so, are we getting best use out of it for our residents? And thirdly, is it held by the Council as an income producing investment, such as our retail portfolio? If the answer to one or all of these questions is yes, then the building has clearly a continuing use for the Council and will not be considered for disposal. If the answer to one or all of those questions, the same set of questions, is no, then the next step is to determine whether by refurbishment or redevelopment we can achieve a better use of the existing building. But finally, if none of the above apply, then the building must be deemed surplus to requirement and is therefore a clear case for disposal. It is important to understand that the Council is not a property company in the business of being property owners just for the sake of it. Madam Mayor, having applied these logical steps, it's then possible to put together a programme for disposals, as we have done for a number of years, the aim of which is to release cash that can be better used by the Council for the benefit of its residents. Furthermore, where a decision to dispose is made, we will always look to see if there are special opportunities to sell to either partner organisations or others where they can bring extra benefits to the council in addition to the sale price itself. An example of where this has been very successful is the recent sale of Barrow Hall to Uxbridge College. The long list of possible disposals for 25-26 is currently being finalised. This schedule will be presented to Cabinet as usual. It is anticipated that much of this information will be available earlier on in the new financial year than has previously been the case, continuing with this administration's discipline of sound financial management, transparency and accountability. Thank you.
Is there a supplementary question? Item 9.5, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can the Cabinet Member please update the Council on the positive progress made to secure an exciting new future for the much-loved Beck Theatre?
Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you to Councillor Davis for your question. Members will be aware that just before the Christmas break, we were able to secure terms with the new provider, Parkwood Theatres, to take over the Beck Theatre for a term of 15 years initially, with the possibility of extending this by a further 10 years. Within this deal, we were able to secure a seamless transition following the end of the Council's partnership with Trafalgar Theatres on the 13th of January. There was no need for the Beck to close, despite the large amounts of misinformation spread on social media, and in contrast to those on the opposite side of the chamber saying we were running the theatre into the ground. Madam Mayor, this administration does not spend its time grandstanding on social media or getting new T-shirts printed. No, Madam Mayor, this administration did what it always does. We got our heads down and got on with the job in hand, determined to deliver a new operator for our much-loved theatre, much as in the same way my colleague Councillor O'Brien achieved with our nursery provision. We have delivered a better value offer just as we promised. The new deal marks a longer-term collaboration with Parkwood Theatres, which we believe will provide a more sustainable future for the theatre, an exciting new offer for our communities, and an improved cultural offering for our residents. The key aspects of Parkwood's proposals were to maintain the Beck Theatre's cultural identity, enhance community engagement and participation through more diverse programming. But more importantly, they were able to deliver a financially more sustainable model without reliance on financial subsidy that Trafalgar had demanded. Parkwood have already publicly stated they are looking forward to preserving the long-term future of the Beck Theatre by not only maintaining its legacy, but by bringing fresh, exciting ideas and opportunities to the stage. This commitment includes providing a vibrant hub for creativity, as well as delivering first-class performances. They will naturally need time to work up their new programme in the early months of their management, and we will do all we can to support them in this endeavour. The Council has just this week completed the handover of the current operators to Parkwood Theatres as promised, and we're looking forward to working with them on the long-term future of the Beck. I wish to take this opportunity to thank the Corporate Director and her team for all of the hard work that's achieved this result. Thank you.
Is there a supplementary question?
No supplementary, Madam Mayor.
Item 9.7, Councillor Punja.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Will the Cabinet Member for Children and Families offer her congratulations to the Save Our Nurseries campaign, which successfully overturned the closures, resulting in keeping all 3 nursery early years centres open under new management?
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Punja, for your question. I refer you to my last answer of 9.8. The answer is in that. Thank you.
Is there a supplementary question?
There is, Madam Mayor. So does the Cabinet Member agree that her decision to do everything in her power to close the 3 early year centres in the face of intense resident opposition was the wrong decision, seeing that the Council's newly approved SEND strategy relies greatly on early year settings to boost early years diagnosis so that more support and early intervention can be given at the right time and the right place.
Councillor O'Brien.
I would have to say that our early intervention is working very well at this moment in time. It's something that we've been introducing over the last couple of years. It's not contingent to be part of the early years service in its own right. It runs across all of our services. So that's the best answer I can give you. Thank you.
Item 9.2. Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can the Cabinet Member please give an update on the outcome of the recent Care Quality Commission's inspection of Hillingdon Council's adult social care services?
Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Dennis. Indeed I can, and with much pride and joy and a sense of relief. The Care Quality Commission assurance process formally started in February 2024 when we were notified that we were required to submit information returns within 3 weeks. In March 2024, we submitted 199 single pieces of quality assured evidence. Over the following 4 months, adult social care and health colleagues worked tirelessly to provide details and evidence of work with residents, carers and stakeholders. Our journey to prepare all staff and stakeholders began, and we engaged and updated them on a weekly basis. The on-site inspection was from the 22nd to the 24th of July, where we ran 23 sessions attended by over 110 staff, colleagues, partners and 8 inspectors. In addition, the inspection team met with 10 service users and their families and 15 informal carers. We received the report in December 2024 with a score of 73% and a good rating, currently placing us 2nd in London and 3rd in England. And although it is fair to say that other inspections across the country continue to take place, there we are at the moment. Our excellent partnership shone through with one of our lead domiciliary care providers stating, "The market in Hillingdon is one of trust, where providers share information and support each other, which stems from the leadership of Hillingdon Council and partner organisations, where challenge isn't punitive, but improvement is continuously sought. While Hillingdon is very much on the front foot in its use of data and digitalisation, there is still more collectively that we can do to empower service users, relatives and stakeholders." We stated in our adult social care self-assessment in March 24 how proud we are that public health is embedded in adult social care, and one of our key strengths is our early intervention and prevention approach. This was recognised by inspectors and noted in the report. Preventative services provided by the local authority and partners had a positive impact on well-being outcomes for people who might have care and support needs. Carers were very satisfied with the Commission Carers Support Organisation. It is important to note that since writing the self-assessment in early 2024, we have made significant improvements and continue to strive forward using the findings of the CQC as a foundation for our ongoing improvement plan. The entire staff team represented adult social care and health in such a positive way, showing their commitment to our residents and striving to support them to live healthy, active and independent lives. They found the inspection process exciting and challenging, but embraced the opportunity to share their stories of good practice and good outcomes for residents. We are immensely proud of their achievements. James Bullion, the CEO of the Care Quality Commission, commented, "Overall, Hillingdon should be proud of this assessment. They have created foundation for progress, and we look forward to seeing how their plans develop. In conclusion, I would like to thank Councillor Punja, Councillor Dennis for their time with the inspectors for being interviewed, the Health and Social Care Scrutiny Committee for everything they do to ensure that we are on our toes, for all our statutory health colleagues, all our voluntary sector, our previous Director of Adult Social Care, Tony Zayman, who did much to establish the foundations of this work, and our current Director of Adult Social Care, Sandra Taylor, who has shown exceptional dedication and professionalism to get us where we are today, and the whole of our dedicated staff. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Is there a supplementary question?
No, Madam Mayor.
Item 9.4, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It has been reported that the savings anticipated by the Labour government accruing from the cancellation of the pensioners' winter fuel payment have failed to be delivered, largely due to the surge in successful applicants for pension credit. Can the Cabinet member please advise what action has been taken in Hillingdon to mitigate the loss of the winter fuel payment to our pensioner residents?
Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Martin, for your question. Hillingdon Council is committed to putting residents first, and in line with our vision, we have and we will continue to take action to support older people to live active, independent, healthy lives in warm homes and safer neighbourhoods. Winter fuel allowance removed as a universal benefit for older people. To receive the allowance now requires eligibility for pension credit, i.e. single person weekly income must not exceed £173.75 per week, £265.20 per week as a couple. In effect, pension credit is a top-up income for those on low incomes to achieve the equivalent of the state-funded pension. There is a programme to raise awareness in place to encourage people to take up, etc., working with our partners, Age UK. The support for older people this winter. We are committed, as I have said, to helping our older residents to be safe and warm, which includes financial advice and support, the Household Support Fund, where we can have a provision of food, meals, support service to older residents, financial assistance for those that are eligible, and funding for partner voluntary sector organisations, which include the Bell Farm Christian Centre, to provide early intervention and prevention and support services. The older people's support includes doorway information, advice service delivered across the Useley and West Drayton Food Bank, and social and recreational activities and training courses, all available to Hillingdon's older residents. In the promotion and take-up of pension credit and other benefits, the DWP sent out letters to those residents that were in receipt of winter fuel allowance to promote the take-up of pension credit, and this was delivered in October last year. There were 374 residents targeted by the DWP and a further 500 letters, which was 874 letters in total. In addition, through the Household Support Fund, Age UK commissioned to provide targeted outreach to complete the benefits assessment, including pension credit. This complements the existing programmes of work with Age UK in Hillingdon to support older people. Age UK funded by the grant of 47k. Age UK have also used the opportunity to promote take-up of other eligible benefits, working with other organisations, NHS, Bell Farm Christian Centre, Lunch Club, sheltered housing schemes, and Child's Court and Wallace House. The impact: 70 residents applied for pension credit in the period 1st of October 24 to the 31st of December. 70 older residents referred under this scheme. It takes approximately 8 to 12 weeks to process the pension credit application. Residents have also found to be eligible for a range of other benefits. To date, 40 of the residents have been found to be eligible as follows: 17 for attendance allowance, 4 for council tax reduction, Housing Benefit 9, PIP 1, State Pension 1 and Severe Disability Premium 1 and Grants 3. A total of 76 claims for all types of benefits. For other benefits, not pension credit, the value of the additional benefits taken up is 138k. For residents who are not eligible for additional benefits, if their individual situation means they are vulnerable and in need, they can be referred to the Household Support Fund to be considered for assistance. The value of the winter fuel allowance for those that are eligible within pension credit is over 80s £300 and under 80s £200. The work programme to the end of March 2025, there are 5 core locations, 50 visits and event targets to be reached. The idea is to share information with community faith leaders. We have the Older People's Assembly, Hillingdon People, emails, tenants newsletter, social media promotion, social work team, housing teams, targeting the older tenants and the housing associations, and our H for All and our voluntary services, engagement and distribution. We work with the third sector, Age UK, I've mentioned on numerous occasions tonight. That organisation delivers a range of services to enable older people to live healthy, active and independent lives. This includes information and advice, exercise, social classes, befriending, good neighbours and the trusted trader schemes, along with domiciliary support services. From this programme of support in a typical year, 5,600 residents benefit from information and advice and 3,000 with casework support. 800 residents obtain benefit support, successfully claiming 1.3 million in benefits. 400 have participated in group activities, 300 from the Good Neighbours Befriending Scheme, 350 from the Help at Home scheme and 700 from the Trusted Trader scheme. So there we have it. That is what we are doing, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, just because my employer was mentioned in the previous question, which I wasn't aware they would be, I just wanted to make sure that on the record it was noted that's in my declarations of interest. I would have appeared it at the start had I have known. Thank you.
Is there a supplementary question?
No, thank you.
Item 9.9, Councillor R. Mills.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In light of the much previous negative publicity concerning the future of the Uxbridge Library site, can the Cabinet Member please update Council on the current position? Thank you.
Councillor Bianco.
Well, last one of the evening, Madam Mayor. Shall I spin it out a bit? It's very early. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Richard Mills, for your question. Timely question, indeed. Clearly, the future of the existing library site is indelibly linked to the creation of its replacement. And in that regard, I'm delighted to confirm that the new Uxbridge Library, to be located in the very Civic Centre in which we stand, remains on target for completion in the spring of this year. The new library development will deliver a state-of-the-art brand new library for Hillingdon residents, one that is fully compliant, exactly as this administration promised to do. In addition, the Registrar's Department will also be relocated into a new suite of rooms, providing modern and greatly improved spaces for weddings and other functions. In light of this progress, we have been actively seeking a new owner for the current Uxbridge Library, which we hope will preserve this as a community facility. I'm immensely pleased to report now that a sale is currently being negotiated, with heads of terms agreed and solicitors instructed to just such a partner. And I hope to be in a position to make a formal announcement very soon. So please watch this space. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Is there a supplementary question, Councillor Mills?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.